Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and today we have a very special newscast in store for you. The holiday of Rosh Hashanah, or New Year's in the Hebrew calendar, beginning tomorrow night, Monday, September 6th. So we thought that we'd take a look back at some of the biggest news from the past 12 months. Moving on, break out the theremin because this next story is just begging for a spooky sci-fi background. After 30 years at the helm of the Israeli space security program, and after receiving 3 Israeli security awards, retired Israeli general and respected professor Chaim Eshed is now unveiling that yes, there are aliens among us, yes, Israel has made contact with them, and no, humanity is not ready for them. Also, before you start doubting his words, the 87-year-old Eshed was clear in his recent interview with Yediot Ahronot News that he's not talking about immigration, but rather about a galactic federation complete with an underground base on Mars, where there are American and alien representatives apparently present. He also explains that President Trump both knows about them and was on the verge of disclosing their existence, only to be persuaded not to by the Federation, in order to avoid mass hysteria and panic here on Earth. Apparently, humanity just still has a long way to grow before we can understand the gravity of their presence. The final question, however, is what do they want? But perhaps thankfully for us, Eshed says that it's essentially just to research and understand the fabric of the universe. Moving on, since the start of the COVID pandemic, scientists have been hard at work trying to either treat or vaccinate against the still spreading virus. But what if existing drugs already hold the key? It's a burning question that many have asked and that Israeli researchers now may have answered. Scientists from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem are now saying that they've identified 18 drugs that could actually treat, if not quote-unquote cure, COVID-19 patients. The list reportedly including a treatment for atherosclerosis and another for the treatment of cancer. Professor Shai Arkin, a biochemist in the Alexander Zilberman Institute of Life Science, explains that over 2,800 different approved-for-use compounds were tested against COVID-infected cells, and that 18 of them, quote, exhibited remarkable potency against the whole virus in vitro experiments, end quote. In fact, Arkin reporting that almost 100% of the treated cells lived despite being infected, whereas without the pre-existing drug compounds, roughly half of the infected cells died. Still, despite the incredible potential, Arkin is keeping the names of these drugs pretty close to the vest. He argues that he cannot make any proper recommendations until they've at least gone through some clinical trials. And in other COVID news, daily infections in Israel now topping 1,400, over 10% of which are coming from abroad, including from supposedly safe countries. Perhaps then, in attempts to make it easier to stay local, the Israeli COVID cabinet is looking for strategies to open and manage cultural events. Chana Rifkin with the details.
המטרה פה היא להבין את העולם שלכם וביחד לחשוב על דרכים איך מצד אחד אנחנו לא מאפשרים לעולם התרבות להפוך למדגרה להדבקה של קורונה, ומצד שני לאפשר להמשיך לתת תרבות, להמשיך לעבוד, להמשיך לחיות. המגמה שלנו כממשלה היא הפעם לעשות הכל, לא לסגור שום דבר, כלום, ולאפשר למדינה להמשיך לפעול לצד הקורונה.
Prime Minister Naftali Bennett meeting with representatives of the Israeli culture sector at Habima Theater in Tel Aviv. The meeting focusing on finding effective means of keeping the public happy and entertained while safe behind COVID regulations. And in coordination with Culture and Sports Minister Yechiel Troper, as well as Health Minister Nitzan Horowitz, the attendees providing suggestions on how to move forward. Among them, a potential return to the Green Pass system and a focus on mask enforcement and other, quote, common sense regulations. Troper, for one, saying, quote, "We are not here to close things down, but neither are we here to close our eyes." Then Health Minister Horowitz likewise stressing the importance of transparency and cooperation between the government and the public, explaining that the government neither wants to nor intends to impose restrictions without an open dialogue. Meanwhile, theater fans not the only ones standing to benefit from the new initiative either. The culture and entertainment industry among the hardest hit by the pandemic and also the slowest to recover.
A sight you'll see around almost every corner in the old city of Jerusalem, heavily armed police. These are the first responders to any terrorist attack in the holy city.
Perhaps most astounding is that it's women that make up some 30% of this almost 9,000 strong troop. And today we're going to meet one such officer who's around the same size as me, but with one big difference. She's expertly trained at an elite level, and she's going to give us some insight into the daily duties of a Jerusalem border police guard.
This is Shoshana. At 19 years old, she left her home in Florida to enlist in the Israeli military. Brandishing an M16 rifle and kitted out with heavy body armour, Shoshana's duties are the same as her male counterparts.
You see a lot of times in jobs, there's a difference with men and women. But here, I feel equal. Like, I really do feel as an equal, and it's interesting to be treated the same and have the same responsibilities and the same jobs, and it's really cool, honestly. Wow.
It's a job fraught with danger, guarding three of the world's holiest sites in an area so sensitive amidst a tense political backdrop. The Jerusalem district is inundated with terror attacks.
But you're not only there to thwart potential terror attacks, but sometimes you're often the target. How does that make you feel?
It can definitely be scary sometimes, but I do have confidence in myself and like what I've been through with training and everything. So I do believe that I can take care of any situation if I'm in it.
We make our way through East Jerusalem, an area at the centre of political discourse, as Palestinian leadership seek this as the capital of a future Palestinian state. It's here Shoshana tells me why she left her home in America to become a police officer in Israel.
I love this country. You know, when you love something, you don't just say you love it, but you have to do something for it as well. When I heard about Magav Border Police, I found it very interesting to work. We're not on the borders and waiting for war to happen, but we're really inside and we're really doing things every day.
We enter a neighbourhood called Atur, where border police patrol daily, looking for potential suspects attempting to make their way to the old city, or as Shoshana explains, to disperse riots.
If you get hit with a block, I guess you just keep running and you try to catch the person also. Every situation's different, you know. Rocks, you just keep running. Molotov cocktails, you keep running, you try to catch the person who did it, because clearly it's not something that's allowed to happen, so that would usually cause for an arrest.
But today we're being taken to a lookout, sitting atop a police station, which gives them a bird's eye view of the entire 125 square mile spread of the ancient city and its surrounds.
So this is quite the vantage point. Talk me through the significance of this area.
So this is definitely a viewpoint over pretty much all of Jerusalem that you can see.
From this position, communication is vital to share information about suspicious activity around the holy sites with the boots on the ground.
We have our combat female and male soldiers, police officers pretty much scattered all around Jerusalem protecting this city.
From up on high, Shoshana shares with me her experiences patrolling an Arab village called Ras Al Amud, inside of which is a Jewish neighborhood.
A lot of times you have riders who come and they throw, whether it's Molotov cocktails or rocks or whatever it is, you have a lot of people, they try to throw things into the Jewish neighborhood to endanger their lives or their homes.
Shoshana opening up about the real challenges of being a female border guard.
If I have to do an arrest, it's not always easy, you know. A lot of times the person's bigger than me or even stronger than me and they're trying to get away. So yeah, that's definitely happened.
Making our way back to base, Shoshana opens up further.
I obviously do believe that maybe like men are built stronger and like that's fine and like that's just like another way that women, like we have to push ourselves.
You have to be a particular kind of brave though to be really on the front lines. You're the first responders to terrorist attacks. How do you mentally prepare for something like that?
I don't know if you can ever be fully prepared for something. That's the thing. Like you get put in this situation and you just have to act however you think that it's appropriate to act.
Yeah.
In a city that houses some of the world's holiest sites, security has many faces.
While they're not here right now, you can also find female border police guards protecting the entrance to the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. But as you can see right now, they also have another specific job, which is ensuring that non-Muslims don't enter the holy site outside of specifically allotted times.
And even in the alleyways that appear to be empty, Magav is aided by technology, and backup is never far away. Tracy Alexander, ILTV, Jerusalem.
All right, finally, the future of urban air mobility is here. With cities around the world at their max for congestion, Israeli aviation company Urban Aeronautics is taking to the air, providing the ultimate solution for saving time and even lives. This self-proclaimed car-sized aircraft offering safe and quick transport with the ability to navigate and land in locations that no other passenger aircraft has ever been capable of, until now.
What if cars could fly? Thanks to the leading Israeli aviation company Urban Aeronautics, flying cars are about to become a reality. It is a car-sized urban aircraft that may revolutionize the future of air mobility in a safe, quiet, sustainable, and profitable way. The ILTV team had to go and see the City Hawk with their own eyes. Haran Ben Eliyahu, the Vice President of Business Development of Urban Aeronautics, took us on a tour to give us a deeper insight of this incredible invention.
This is actually the first prototype that our founder, Dr. Rafi Yoeli, built in Tel Aviv in his apartment in 2002. And then he took it out and proved that the technology actually works. That's why he named the company Urban Aeronautics, because he built something that could fly people around cities, in and out, from rooftop to rooftop. We manufacture everything ourselves. You can see some of the components are from carbon fiber. This is very strong and very light. You can feel for yourself. We also manufacture the blades, which is a very unique. There's only a handful of companies that can create this kind of product. You can see our actually flying prototype, which is a 1-ton vehicle with a jet engine and 2 ducted fans, and already flew 300 test flights here in Israel. This is just 80% of the size of the actual product. The City Hawk, which we envision to be the air taxi, is going to be 20% bigger.
And to tell us more about their vision of aviation transportation is the CEO, Nimrod Golan Yanai.
Urban Aeronautics' vision is to lead the new future of urban air mobility. The City Hawk revolution is going to be introduced to the public in phases. Probably the first use cases are going to be EMS, emergency medical services, where you can access a car accident or any other incident in minutes. Then to be followed up with airport shuttle, for example, taking off from JFK to Manhattan. Then to be followed with air taxi, full-scale utilization, for the public, mobility as a service.
City Hawk is equipped with groundbreaking internal rotor fancraft technology.
When you have an aircraft that has no external rotors, then suddenly you can introduce aviation into the urban environment.
This state-of-the-art technology brings the dream of air mobility to everyone and everywhere.
When we developed the City Hawk, we do not aim for, just the rich people. We aim for all of us to use it. So it's going to be pretty much the same cost as taking an Uber all the way from JFK to Manhattan.
And topping it off, Urban Aeronautics uses eVTOL twin engines, and future eVTOL models of City Hawk will run on hydrogen, known to be a completely sustainable power source.
We're going to be the first eVTOL in the world that is going to use hydrogen fuel cell to fly.
The Israeli-based aviation company, in its first stage of manufacturing, now preparing to develop prototypes and is set to be ready for production in 3 to 5 years.
We see a lot of movements around the financial markets towards eVTOL developers like ourselves. Now it's the perfect time to step into this domain.
Thanks to Urban Aeronautics, the future is already taking off. Through the Investination platform, you can join the growth of Israel's up-and-coming startup technology. Investination is an investment platform developed by the Basadno Investment Group. Basadno affords its investors the opportunity to invest in some of the most promising startups. Visit investination.com to learn more.
Meantime, among the biggest concerns going forwards, of course, is Iran. But the new Biden administration's approach to Tehran, and by extension the 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal, leaves much to be desired here in Jerusalem. New Secretary of State Antony Blinken, for one, repeating claims that the United States will happily return to the deal as long as Iran returns to compliance first. Similarly, United Nations Ambassador nominee Linda Thomas-Greenfield promising to push back on Iran's nuclear aggression.
We'll work and make every effort to ensure that the Iranians do not gain access to a nuclear weapon. Unfortunately, over the past 4 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of backtracking since we pulled out of the agreement.
But officials in Iran are taking further steps away from the controversial nuclear deal, warning on Tuesday that the Biden administration will not have infinite time to rejoin the agreement, and that Tehran expects Washington to reverse Trump-era sanctions first. Then, meanwhile, on Wednesday, Iranian officials repeated threats to demolish Tel Aviv and Haifa should Israel make the, quote, mistake of attacking Iran or Iranian interests. Israel, on the other hand, refusing to wait and see, repeating promises to fight Iran wherever and whenever necessary.
ביום השואה הבינלאומי אני גם צריך לציין עובדה מצערת שהניסיונות להכחיד מיליוני יהודים לא נעלמו מהעולם. איראן מובילה בריש גלי את הניסיון הזה, והמדיניות שאני מוביל היא ברורה. אנחנו לא נאפשר לאיראן להתחמש בנשק גרעיני. אני אומר את זה לידידים ולאויבים כאחד. זו המשימה העליונה שלנו, לשמור על החיים כאן, לשמור על החיים של המדינה שלנו. אנחנו נגן על עצמנו בכל דרך ובהצלחה.
Joining us now with more on the assassinations of Iranian officials Mohsen Fakhrizadeh and Moslem Shadan is former Israeli Deputy National Security Advisor, Professor Chuck Freilich. Professor, thank you so much for being with us. Now, first off, all fingers are pointing at Jerusalem, and many have discussed the likelihood that Fakhrizadeh's was an Israeli assassination. But what about Shadan? How likely was this an Israeli strike?
Well, I don't have any confirmation, of course, but I think it's pretty clear Israel's been waging a so-called campaign between the campaigns for a number of years now, trying to prevent Iran from setting up an offensive base in Syria for operations against Israel. They've been trying to establish air, naval, and ground bases, and this is something which Israel cannot allow to happen. And in some ways, it's an even greater threat than the nuclear one, in the sense that it's much shorter term. The nuclear threat, we still have a while. This one, we can't afford to wait very long with.
Well, so you know, what does this say for, what do these recent strikes really say about maybe the balance of power in the Middle East and how that's shifting? Because these latest strikes, if nothing else, are, you know, a pretty big black spot on Iran's security.
They certainly are. And there have been a series of attacks in Iran itself, some attributed to Israel, some maybe not. In any event, it demonstrates the fact that Iran is very, very vulnerable to outside intervention. But Iran is a regional power, and playing with it is rather dangerous. I think that Iran is the first adversary we've ever faced, which is so powerful, so sophisticated, and so far away that we probably cannot defeat it. We can't win in a confrontation with Iran. We can defend ourselves quite successfully, and I sleep quite well at night, but we can't defeat Iran. And while there are some things that we must do, such as taking measures to prevent their entrenchment in Syria and to prevent the continuation of the nuclear program, at the same time, what we should be trying to do is lower tensions with Iran and coordinate policy with the incoming Biden administration.
All right, well, so, you know, how do you see that coordination, especially between the Biden administration and Iran? You know, how do you see that showing up or taking shape, especially as we've just covered the fact that the Iranian parliament is now hardlining its nuclear ambitions?
Well, it's not surprising that they're taking aggressive measures following the killing of Fakhrizadeh. We wouldn't expect any less, and I hope that they won't respond militarily against Israel, which they may still do. And that's, of course, also something that had to be taken account by whoever launched the attack. But in terms of the consultations, the very close dialogue that I think should be underway with the incoming administration, well, the targeted killing of Fakhrizadeh, if we're behind it, was not a move that was conducive to that. And maybe that outweighs considerably whatever limited tactical advantage was gained by taking one person out of the picture is as important as he is.
Wow. All right. Well, it'll be really interesting to see if this is truly a Hydra situation, as you're kind of alluding to. Professor Freilich, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, Israel reportedly destroying a forward Syrian outpost in northern Israeli territory overnight, the latest in a rare admission of Israeli actions against Syrian assets. The Israeli army, quote, vaporizing a Syrian regime observation post late Tuesday night on the Israeli side of the Alpha Line, a UN-patrolled buffer zone established in 1974. No injuries have been reported. And releasing the footage Wednesday morning, IDF spokesperson Avichai Adri tweeting that Israel would not tolerate any attempt to violate its sovereignty, especially as this is apparently the third mission of this kind in the last year. Outposts like these reportedly used by both Iran proxy fighters from the Lebanese Hezbollah and other pro-Iranian militants. Additionally, speaking with Hebrew media, the IDF saying it chose to use ground forces in this post's demolition rather than the typical airstrikes just to send a message. A message, it seems, is ultimately intended for Iran. The operation coincidentally coming just hours after the official confirmation of David Barnea as the new director of the Mossad, Israel's premier foreign intelligence outfit. And Prime Minister Netanyahu outlining the Mossad's continuing mission at Barnea's swearing-in ceremony.
האיום הגדול ביותר זה האיום הקיומי שמוצב על ידי הניסיונות של איראן להתחמש בנשק גרעיני, בין אם לאיים עלינו ישירות בהשמדה של מדינה קטנה ומרוכזת בנשק אטומי, או בין אם לאיים עלינו במאות אלפי טילים או רבבות טילים שמגובות במטריה גרעינית. זה איום שמאיים על המשך המפעל הציוני. ועלינו להילחם באיום הזה, ללא סוף. כי איראן שונה מיתר המדינות שמחזיקות היום בגרעין. ולכן הכלה זה לא, הכלה, מה שהם קוראים, containment, זה לא אופציה.
Barnea beginning his 5.5-year term following Yossi Cohen, who is largely credited for his role in establishing the Abraham Peace Accords and countless missions to slow Tehran's nuclear breakout, including the January 2018 raid of Iran's secret nuclear archives. Cohen was even awarded the Prime Minister's Prize for Mossad operations just last week, thanks to Cohen's daring, imaginative, and crazy operations, successfully carried out by the agency.
אני אומר לכם, ג'יימס בונד פרייר לעומתכם. אני יודע שאנחנו הולכים לפתוח את בתי הקולנוע בעוד כמה ימים. אין שם סרט אחד, סרט פעולה אחד, שמשתווה למה שהמוסד.
And now, before we go, let's take a look at what went viral in Israel this past year.
אי אפשר לנהל שום עסק, אחוז הניצול, הם שמו כסף, אנחנו השארנו את זה בכנסת, הם שמו כסף, טעות על טעות על טעות על טעות, תוסיפו את נתב"ג שזה...
All right, that's it for our special today, and we'll be off until this Thursday, but I hope that you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. Also, for more of the latest updates and news from ILTV, please don't forget to like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as to our newsletter at iltv.tv. And most importantly, we hope that you have an incredible holiday. Shana Tova u'metuka. Have a sweet and happy new year. May you and your loved ones be blessed with health and good fortune. I'm Aaron Porras. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching.